And it's perfectly fine to have repercussions for people going against those limitations. Like if you walk into like a kindergarten and start teaching them all sorts of like horrible things through your speech, yeah, there should absolutely be repercussions. I'm more than happy for that to be enacted.
So you are okay with repercussions, but you said limit speech. So does this mean like, I guess like I'm trying to get into like what you're saying. So yeah, limited speech with repercussions.
Yeah.
So would there be rules based on the speech? Because you're advocating for limited speech, but of what you deem is harmful, right?
Yeah. So you're asking like my stance. So I'm giving you basically, if I had it my way, this is how it would go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I had it my way, basically we would lay out rules. You can't do certain things with your speech. We already have some of these rules in place now, and that's probably avoided quite a few catastrophes over time and the degradation of our own culture. Mm-hmm. So in this case, yeah, that's something I would like to avoid, like the degradation of our culture, people who incite riots or people who promote and advocate for extremism, like radicalists who create and basically cultivate domestic terrorism. They do that through their freedom of speech. So I'd be more than happy to limit these people, make rules that say if you do these kinds of speeches, you get X punishment.
I guess I'd be mostly okay with that, except for the main problem is from your analogy or whatever, right? It's basically saying that you're the king of the world, right? You would, how you would rule it, I guess. So It just, like, I guess it'd be if that's the case, if it was like a one person rule and it's only like what you deem as harmful, right? Well, what do you deem as harmful? Because there's a lot of people that would deem a lot of things as harmful that a lot of other people would not deem as harmful. So like, let's say, maybe like how Nazi Germany was censoring like certain works and basically burning religious texts that they just deemed that was like very harmful to what they think their community or what they were trying to perceive as. But a lot of people wouldn't deem those as harmful works or anything like that. I feel like that just leads to a lot of gray area. A lot of room basically to it be abused and then be nitpicky on what you choose on like what you think is harmful or not. Like, why should it be based upon like not even one person, even a collective? Why should it be based on a collective to think that they are what they deem is right and wrong should be right or wrong for every other human being in the world?
Okay. So, are you trying to tell me you take issue with a single person, excuse me, or a collective of any kind making rules? Is that what I'm getting?
I would have a problem with a collective or a person making a universal rule on what should be limited for speech for everybody on Earth. I think I would have a problem with that because there's too many clashing ideologies of what people think are bad and what people think are good.
No, that's fine. Let's simplify it then. Let's go with me, right? You just attack me. Criticize whatever rules I make. Let's go with the one I just did. So I would limit speech that would advocate for extremism and potentially grow domestic terrorism as a movement. And if you were to in fact engage in that, you would be punished, right? So, do you have a problem with that rule, or any way I've laid it out?
Because, well, when you talk about extremism, there's some things, even in extremism, there's some things that are sometimes would be considered extremist at the time, but later on would be kind of like still in the moral right in what we're thinking, or like a very moral right.
Would you have any examples?
Like an extremist group. Would you say the Black Panthers are an extremist group?
No.
You wouldn't. Wait, why wouldn't you?
I would. I guess because I'm not like racist. Most of the people that called them extremists were. Yes, most of the people that called them extremists called them so based on their opposition to Jim Crow, right? And they thought opposition to Jim Crow could be classified as extremism, which, in my definition, no, it wouldn't be. In fact, that's just proper discourse.
Maybe
that's proper. right? That's proper. That's proper. I guess legal discourse, right? And that's something that's necessary, something that's actually made our country better. The fact that we have that, because if you're not allowed to have any discourse or any dissent from laws, you would pretty much eliminate the Supreme Court. You would eliminate any changes to laws, and we'd still have things like hanging women who practice science and calling them witches, right? So if we eliminate discourse like that, then obviously we're in a much worse situation, and that's not something I would ever ban in if I have it my way. I'm talking about the domestic terrorism things of things like the Boogaloo Boys, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're a group who their main goal is to incite a second civil war. And seeing the harm that the first civil war caused, I'm very, very against the civil war happening. But it's also very extreme to start a war over, I guess, political dissent from the left leaning pundits, right? So I would say that that's extremism, and when there's other avenues to take to, I guess, further your agenda or get your message out there, as opposed to starting a civil war, you should take those instead of starting a civil war.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I kind of agree. Well, first off, I kind of have to take a step back because it is kind of my fault. I guess I should ask you, what is your definition of extremism, like brought down to the roots? I know you kind of try to give it basically examples of what you would classify as extremism, but I just kind of want your specific definition for what is extremism first off.
Do you want mine, or do you want one that's going to come from Oxford? Do you want my personal definition, or something from somebody with some credentials? Tygga, are you still here? Did I cut out? Can everyone else hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Oh, okay. He's probably just cutting out or something.
Damn, a debate with no spurging. That's crazy.
Oh no, that's because I like Tygga, so.
Y'all are still going. I stopped paying attention.
Yeah.
Wish he was locked out with me.
Hello. I just lagged out. I couldn't hear anything after I said my question, so
No, that's okay. So
that's my apologies. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Yeah.
No, you're okay. So I was asking, do you want my own personal definition, or do you want a definition from like Oxford, Merriam, anything like that?
I guess I would go with your own personal definition because, in fairness, if your definition has differences between like an Oxford or Merriam, then I probably can't use that. It's not fair for you if you have your own definition of what extremism is. I'm going to debate under what you think your extremism is.
So my definition of extremism is, I would say, thought or action that is unnecessarily harsh, harmful, or fanatic. So an example would be if you want to fight for women's rights, right? I think that can be a perfectly noble cause, but if you think that the best way to go about that is to kill all men, well, that's probably an unnecessary step to take, and an unnecessarily harsh or extreme step to take to fight for women's rights. So if you were to kill all men, I would say that's extremism, even if it is for women's rights.
Okay. Okay. I guess I'd have like a couple of questions then, because I feel like, do you think so? That's kind of an interesting take when you really chop it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because would that mean, in the sense that I'm guessing you're not pro riots, right? So you're not pro riots when it comes to BLM, correct?
Not pro riots.
So basically, when like the BLM movement happened or like the riots happened or whatever, people were like, there was kind of like a discussion of whether you should be pro riots or not pro riots, because a lot of people from the pro riot side would basically be like, we've tried doing peaceful demonstrations, we've tried doing this, and a third.
Mm-hmm.
For over how many years, and the only way that you could possibly get through, we've decided the only way that we could possibly get through is now having to riot. And now look, since we rioted, we got more attention out of it, and there's now more attention towards this problem and towards the causing of this problem. Now, I'm not saying that I kind of agree or disagree with what the heck they're saying or whatever, because in fairness, they did get more attention after the riots. Once people's fucking buildings started getting burned down and people's houses started catching on fire, people started to take notice and take BLM a lot more seriously, and a lot of people started actually being pro BLM. Would you consider them being extremists in that case? Then
So the specific acts you're talking about are business owners having their buildings burned. Is there any specific event that you saw these riots happen, or did they happen in your town?
Let me give you like a specific they happened in my town, which is kind of surprising for where I live.
Right.
Our mall got burned down, which is kind of ridiculous, but our mall got burned down. Minneapolis was fucking basically terrible.
Right. So I think I'm processing what you're saying then. So you're not asking me if I'm against BLM as a whole. You're asking me if I'm against these specific things that were done. Okay. Then of course. So, and to make it extra clear, I don't think that the entire BLM movement are people that are rioters or anarchists or burning down buildings and so forth. I actually think that that's a small portion of it, and if it wasn't, we'd actually see it on a much bigger scale. And because of that, I'm not against BLM as a whole. I am against the people that take BLM and go to the extremes with it. And again, that's still in line with like what I'm trying to say, right? So I'm all for women's rights, right? I'm not for the extremists that are saying kill all men to get women's rights. So them I'm against, but the entire women's rights movement, I'm with that shit. So it's kind of like similar with BLM, right? I'm not with the people that are going to take it to the extreme and be like, yeah, just kill all cops so there's no more shootings. I'm not with that. That's an extremist point of view. I am with the idea that, okay, there seems to be a disparity between, the socioeconomic climate that we're experiencing as people of color and those that are not people of color are experiencing. So I think that's a perfectly fine mindset to have, and I think it's something you can definitely have some public discourse about, even protest about. I'm for protest. If you're going to come out and peacefully protest, that's 100% fine. And I think there's a reason that that's constitutionally protected, and I think it should stay that way.
Okay. All right. So you're only good with peaceful protests, I'm assuming, right? Because here's the question I basically have to ask, is because when do you know the line then? Because the problem is with because at some point you could peaceful protest all you want, and then we could have a society basically like China where they just take tanks and run you the fuck over for basically trying to protest, and you're going to get censored, and you're never going to get your protests are never going to be heard by the general public. So when I hear
it's a good thing I don't want to run this like China. I don't like how China's government's run, actually.
Yeah, well, but it allows for something that could, where you could have a China, where basically, here, if we don't like what you're saying, fuck you. We're going to kill you. We're either going to kill you, or your voice is never going to be heard. It's like, so when it comes to basically saying that any group, or any collective as a whole, because I don't disagree with you, NoLuck. I think you personally probably wouldn't run the world like fucking China, okay? I think that, most human beings probably won't run the world like China is running the world, right? Like running their own government right now. But there is a problem that China's government is in existence right now, and it is kind of being ran that way, where it could be run on a worldwide scale, where we can't, where now we have this oppressive authoritarian figure that is basically telling you, hey, this is what you can say and this is what you can't say, and now you have these limitations on them. And even if you're peaceful protesting or whatever, if we don't like what you say, fuck you. You're going to jail, for the rest of your life.
Right. So, yeah, that's kind of getting into how you would punish people. You can definitely ask me how I would. I will tell you now, I'm really against the death penalty in almost every single case. Not every case, but almost every case, right? And I don't think I can't imagine somebody's speech being so harmful outside of having the anti-life equation that I could see it warranting the death penalty.
Look at some Omega rays. Oh
yes,
shit.
Sir.
Yeah. Well, listen. I don't think. Okay. Well, I will strongly disagree with you on that point, because words and writings throughout time have been demonstratively shown to have power. In anyone who, like, there is a famous quote that is the pen mightier than the sword. I don't have to elaborate that to you or anyone in the VC. Everyone has heard that quote before, but it stands true. A lot of stuff that gets written or spoken and has been outright spoken upon or spoken into the public or whatever, and it keeps getting spoken out, will automatically start to gain traction. Okay. Someone's fucking me up by saying they've never heard of pen mightier than a sword. Someone's ratting really hard. But basically, what I'm saying this, right? There's a lot of people who will come together and it will carry traction. Okay, if you start speaking about stuff and start speaking like basically and protesting and taking it seriously, there will be a lot of people that will take you seriously and either A, follow you, or B, listen and hear you out and decide for themselves whether they want to like listen to you or like be like, okay, I kind of agree, or okay, I kind of disagree. Now, I agree with you. Probably there's probably like not a lot of things that come out besides the anti-life equation that could be bad, but you could have a whole governmental fucking no so fucking the basically, god damn it, James, I hate you so much for typing in chat. I'm gonna have to click off the chat. All right, basically when you're going through you're basically saying that, okay, words and speeches and basically writings and stuff like that and people saying things don't have power. That is completely false. When you look at like the great leaders and the great speakers of our not even like, I won't even go back to like the basic like old history. Let's go to like basically modern history. I'm talking about your Gandhis, your fucking MLKs, people who have been known to have been basically by like just hamstringing and basically just forcing their ideas down people's brains and basically saying, hey, what we're being oppressed by is incorrect, and what is this, that, and the third is being incorrect. People have automatically have changed their whole ideological views based on what they're saying. So by you saying, oh, words or basically writings will not have any type of effect on like, or not have like a tremendous effect on the world, I think that's completely false. And then thirdly, I would say that like you can under this like words, basically speeches and writings, being able to like converse like a majority of people.
Do you mind if I respond to that?
Yeah, you could go ahead. My fault.
Oh, you're good. So Tygga, so I feel like maybe I miscommunicated. I don't think. How do I put this? So I'm not saying that words can't have a significant impact on the world. What I said was that you can't, or I can't think of very many instances or ways to use speech that would seem to warrant the death penalty for me, right? And maybe I haven't lined up exactly what would be exempt from the death penalty, right? So let's go with your line of reasoning here. So a significant impact on the world doesn't necessarily warrant the death penalty as far as I'm concerned. For example, I'm a believer in like climate change, and I actually do believe that, you know, people can have a significant impact. I think companies have a ridiculous impact, right? And one part of the death penalty is that even in these cases, I wouldn't kill entire companies. I wouldn't shut down companies because of their tremendous impact on the entire world, likely permanently, from what I understand of climate change. Same with people. If you drive a Hummer your entire life, I'm not going to kill you either when you're born, because I know that, or after the fact, even though you, as far as I'm concerned, have a tremendous impact on the world by affecting climate change and progressing it in a way that's going to make the planet uninhabitable for the rest of the world. Even in that case, I don't think it warrants the death penalty. So I'm not trying to say that words can't have a significant impact. I'm just saying that I'm hard pressed to think of an example where I'd give someone the death penalty for it. When even in cases where I think you could, you know, potentially be contributing to the end of the world or the end of the human race, I still wouldn't give you the death penalty.
Okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine in your person. Like, here's the problem with this. Okay, NoLuck, you are a rational human being. Okay, like what I mean by you're a rational Western civilized cultured human being. Okay, where basically we're kind of all like, at least on the Western like culture or whatever, like basically and then like the West, like Europe, West Europe, basically, and like America and Canada, basically all these countries in alignment, we basically kind of all think the same. Where we're kind of like, there's not a lot of that you could probably say that I would warrant and just kill you for, just outright, just give you a gun and blow your brains out. All right, I'm probably not. I don't think I'll ever agree to that. I don't think you will ever agree to that. But there's a lot but like I've said before, when people get into power and let's say like have like a high authoritarian like power over people, power corrupts. We've seen power corrupt through history like numerous times. Just because it's not going to corrupt you, like I don't think it will, or me, or like anyone else really in the DC, right, and not be like a jackass with it, doesn't mean it's not going to corrupt all. Okay, so when we get people like I'm going to keep using like people like China's government. Okay, China's government, North Korea, basically people like places where they censor people and basically just kill people for just saying that they don't like the certain political figure that's in charge at the time. And so there's a lot of people who this leads to me to believe that if there's already places in the world that are being suppressed for what they're trying to say and basically protesting and not being allowed a peaceful protest already, what is stopping basically a figurative world government from basically not one day basically having these same beliefs and basically having these like kind of authoritarian beliefs where basically fuck you, you're not going to say anything. You're not going to say anything that is disrespectful to any political leader or any political party. You're not going to say anything that disagrees with what our government laws are. You're not going to say anything with that. We consider that as being harmful, which you have said earlier is like one of your things for why freedom of speech should be limited if what you consider harmful, since it's based on the government that it's in control at the time or whatever, right? Well, since they consider it harmful, they are going to basically remove you from basically the equation. They're just not going to care anymore. And now, like I said, you can respond to that or whatever, but I just think that that's like my main issue with it. My main issue is that yes, there are people who are not like assholes, right? But there are people who are assholes in the world, and that's basically where I'm getting at for when it comes to government oppression, like basically controlling what can be said and what can't be said.
Okay, so I'll answer your two main things. Your first one of what's stopping my system from, I guess, turning into China. Well, as I laid out in my stance, it's me. I don't like how China's run, and I don't like anything similar to that, right? I actually think that China practices forms of extremism. For example, in the case you're bringing up, where they'll censor people and kill people for saying the wrong things. So in China, I think it's very extreme to execute your citizens, the people that, make your country, run, over them dissenting over government decisions. I think that's extremist behavior. So again, as I've laid out, I'm against that, and therefore, if I have it my way in my stance, I will not engage in that. That's just not how I want to do it. Other people, however they have it their way, they're not arguing this. They're not in my stance. And the second thing, I think you were saying was what was that second thing? You said you made like a whole separate point, I think. Oh yes, so that other thing you said, there's a lot of assholes in the world, and that's demonstrable, right? Well, the reason we have rules in the first place is to deal with that kind of thing. The reason we have laws against murder is because there's murderers in the world. The reason we have laws against rape is because there's rapists in the world. Generally, we have laws against, people that we acknowledge exist. Murderers, rapists, or, in other words, assholes, right? So that is essentially what I'm laying out to you, is there's people who use speech to be assholes, to cause harm. In some cases, like the most extreme case being Hitler, you could look at that and say, yes, this man propagandized an entire country to go to war and to genocide, a religious group for who fucking knows what this crazy dude wanted. But the point is that you have these people already. That's fine, right? All I'm saying is that regardless of my system, anyone else's system, assholes exist. All I'm doing is trying to address assholes, right? And not be one myself, and not be an extremist myself. So my system's made to deal with those people that we all acknowledge exists. and that's pretty much the point of it.
All right, so I'll address those two, respond to those. So your first point or whatever, that basically you're saying it's a personal, that it would be personally you. I guess I would just have to ask you a question, NoLuck, and then I'll continue on to my point. Are you immortal? Are you immortal?
Probably.
Probably? Yeah, okay. Well, probably, you know, with like a 60-40% chance, man. I'll give you that. All right, so we'll do, like, but for the 40% chance that you're not immortal, right? Basically, there is no way in hell, okay, outside of you basically being a part of this world government, right? Basically, when I've said like a singular person or basically a collective, right? First things first, I didn't really necessarily mean like, okay, just you in general. When I said like this, I just meant like any singular person or any like collective person. But if we could go into this, I'll just basically say that, okay, whatever, that's my mistake for that. But then I'll basically say that, okay, just because it's you, right, for your singular government, and you're not going to be alive forever, okay? The average lifespan's like what, 80, 90 if we're lucky, maybe 100 if we're really lucky. So when we go into that, right, and basically you're not going to be in power forever, okay? So I'm not talking about like necessarily you. That's why I'm saying. That's why
I don't mean to interrupt you on this. I have to go in like 1 second. I'm putting the thing off. Are you? Can we like wrap this? Like you can finish your point. We can go to conclusions. However you want to wrap this, man.
We could go to I'll try to quickly summarize the next 2 points real quick, and then we can go to conclusions or whatever. But I'd be really interested in redebating you on this. When you have more time?
Okay. Yeah, we can redebate.
Okay. Yeah, I'm cool. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly try to overgeneralize this first 2 points. So, NoLuck. Basically, you are like, when I say that you, as a government official, I don't think that you, during the time that you were the leader, that will like basically would have these corruptive like systems. Okay, but you're not going to be in power forever, right? So if you're not going to be in power forever, then I don't see how future generations down the line will not end up corrupt, because you're not going to be here to try to set them straight, okay? And then number 2, your second, I completely forgot the second point that you brought up. You basically said that we're trying to control the assholes to basically change people who are assholes. That's fine, okay? But that's subjective to you. So when who you think are assholes and who you think are not assholes could be very similar to who I think are assholes and who are not assholes, but it's going to be completely different from, like, let's say a couple of other people in the world, right? Now, I'm not saying rapists should not go all probably get castrated. I mean, I think that they all should be castrated, but I think that I think that when we're talking like in a general sense, there's no way that you could tell me that a single individual or a whole collective as a whole is going to speak for everybody correctly or have all the same moral outline as everyone correctly. And whatever they decide as assholes and not assholes is completely up to is going to be completely up to them, and it could be completely wrong in the whole moral scheme of things. But with that, let's go to conclusions or whatever. You can start first.
Okay. Let me make a refutation real quick, and then we can jump on conclusions. Give me 1 sec. So my refutation, as I said in my stance, I'm kind of the cornerstone of this whole thing. I don't want other people using the rules that I would set forth for the same reasons that I laid out why China shouldn't be using them. Why I don't like how their government's run. You give the wrong people this kind of power to do what I'm talking about, and they'll do what China's doing. They'll kill people for dissenting from the government. So this whole stance that I've laid out is entirely dependent on whether or not I'm running it. If I'm not running it, it's not my stance, and I would not advise anyone else to use it or to empower anyone else to use it, because you can't trust them to not be assholes. I trust myself. Now, aside from that, and just as a second refutation that's kind of ratty, we both agreed that I am probably immortal. So I probably will be around. I just want that on.
Fuck off.
Okay. So I'll just leave it at that for that rattiness, I guess. And then conclusions. Do you want me to conclude first, or do you want to conclude?
Yeah,
first?
you could go ahead and conclude first. I think that's fine. We
can
wrap it up here.
So in this debate, I feel like I won for a few reasons. Number one, I was able to create a very coherent stance. I was able to basically leave it untarnished, um, even when my opponent questioned whether it was good or not to give somebody this kind of power. When I even egged him on to critique, I guess my reasoning, my rules, even my punishments. I feel like my opponent did end up agreeing with a lot of what I had to say. I think he said as much. So I feel like my stance was not destroyed in any way. I feel like it's been very consistent through this whole thing. I also feel as though my opponent didn't offer, I guess, a better alternative, if you will, a more suitable or more beneficial system to my own, or a more beneficial stance or mindset to my own, other than maybe let people talk more. I had trouble getting a read on his stance. Not to say that my opponent was inarticulate by any means. I think Tygga is very well spoken. But yeah, I don't feel as though a very solid counter or alternative to my own system was presented, and therefore I feel like, since my stance does hold more true, and I feel like I've demonstrated it to be more beneficial, I think I've won the debate.
Are you concluded? I don't want to step on your toes or anything.
No, we're good.
Okay, so I will. So I guess in conclusion, I think I won this debate pretty handily. Basically, I have just demonstrated a bunch of critiques, and yes, I did agree with NoLuck on a couple of things. I agreed on him not being an asshole. I agreed on him, probably being immortal, probably, and I guess I agreed on a couple of other things, right? But I think that there's a bunch of main underlying issues that should be spoken about. I have disagreed with the complete justification for why he's his in his own worldview, right? Where basically a government of power where he would be involved would basically be able to succeed or exist. So I basically disagreed with NoLuck saying that he basically would be able to determine what is assholes and what are not assholes, okay? Because even though that I agree that him and my point of view are completely similar in a sense of what we think are assholes, well, it could be completely different than someone in India right now thinking what an asshole and what is not an asshole. There could be complete differences from this culture, just from where we are regionally and where we are culturally, which will allow precedents for what are assholes and what are not assholes, okay? So with this being said, I don't think that he would be able to completely determines what he considers would be harmful or disharmful behavior. So, and I've also completed by making an argument that basically saying in general that there is never going to be a singular person or even a collective that universally throughout the earth will ever make a good argument for why morally something should be good or bad, or what should be morally good or bad to say, without determining it being an asshole and being limited to speech. And I have given a bunch of scenarios where basically a world government where basically would control over what should be speech and what should not be speech. It just kind of leads to a slippery slope of people basically using and abusing this power to basically only allow what they think should be right or what should be wrong to be put out, and basically what they think it should be allowed to be in the media circuits or not. And I've given actually a bunch of examples that happen today where people today are being oppressed and stuff like that. And NoLuck counter this by saying, well, he's not it. Well, it doesn't matter what he's not in this scenario. I'm just saying in general, as people as a whole. Yes, his worldview implies him being the ruler, but I'm just meaning in general, okay, where the worldview would be. But with that being said, I kind of want to make this short so he can hurry up and leave. So I'll just conclude there. Good debate, though.
James Daly with the unofficial judgment.
All right.
Should I even say one? Oh, I pissed people off.
Oh god.
Yeah. I think you'll both do both. But I will say, Tygga, your defeater was broken by your